No guest, no guest, just me, my thoughts on something I wrote down in my journal that's been on my mind as of lately. You know, think about the world that God has created. It's it revolves around changing being an uncomfortable process. Change in itself is very, very extremely uncomfortable. However, perseverance through change is what actually gets the outcome that people look for in the end. Like you think of a butterfly. Before it's a butterfly, it's some sort of worm that has no mobility. It can't fly. It can't go anywhere it wants. It's very prone. It's very vulnerable, and it has to go through this season of change for it to flourish into this beautiful thing. And us as humans are very much the same way. But for us, it's a thing of how do we establish, you know, routine in it. So with me, when I was 17 and the first time I made 100,000, it wasn't necessarily the outcome that was so great for me. It was actually the person and the habits that I adopted in becoming that. You know, it's actually just a process of learning how to say no. Learning how to say no is one of the most valuable attributes that you can actually learn and adopt as a person. And it's a thing of what I just realized recently. It's not a you learn how to say no once and then you know how to say no forever. You need to learn how to say no every single day. Say no to things that you don't need. Say no to people that shouldn't be in your life. Because at the end of the day, if you really say that you want something, you really say that you want X outcome, it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice? It's like, it's either you sacrifice for what you want or you sacrifice the thing that you want. But back to what I was saying, when I did that, I was like, okay, I had established routine. I had an image in my mind, I had a vision of where I wanted to go. I was okay, I'm going to learn this new skill that's going to get me to this outcome. How am I going to learn this skill? I'm going to spend 40 minutes every morning um, learning it. I'm going to spend 40 minutes every evening practicing it. And right before I go to sleep, I'm going to document my journey for today so that tomorrow I'm not starting from zero, but I'm starting from where I left off yesterday. And there's a progress bar now. Now, the thing that I'm trying to get to is much more practical. It's realistic. It's like climbing. If I've never been a rock climber, but if you've ever thought about like how do people practically climb Mount Everest, it's a thing of okay, you go 1, 2, 3 kilometers, you camp, you rejuvenate, rehydrate, you go another 3 kilometers, you camp again, you know. And then after I'd gone through that, sort of said to myself, okay, now I want to practice it, right? And obviously, if you've prepared yourself for battle, I could say that's when the fruits of your labor are finally ready to sprout. It's like it's inevitable to happen because you put in all of this effort into the soil that there's no way that this flower doesn't come out. It's just wouldn't work physically, wouldn't work in the world that God has created. And so obviously the outcome was achieved. We touched that 100, and that was a very distinct feeling. I'll never forget it. It was like finally, but there was a big mistake that I had made over there, and it was being grateful, and that virtue, I'd say, is something that I've only started to learn recently. We always look forward and say, I want to do this tomorrow. I want to do this next week. This is what I want my life to look like next year. But really, all you have is right now and being grateful for right now. When I was planning for this episode, I was scrolling through my Instagram DMs and I stumbled upon a chat with one of a friend of mine who passed away last year. And the last three messages, I deactivated Instagram at the time. The last three messages were, "Yeah, man, it's so crazy. We haven't seen each other in so long. Um, let's link up next week when I'm back." And it puts it into perspective, and it's like, wow, really and truly, there is no such thing as next week. There is no such thing as, the future. There is no such thing as I'm going to do it tomorrow, the next day. It's all you have is now, really. Sometimes you have to realize that, and it's the people that you're with that actually make it worth it, make it worth the while. The people that you spend time with, people that make you laugh. That's that's living. Living isn't I'm living for what's to come, because then truly you're never going to experience now. For you to have knowledge requires you to go through a certain experience and learn something from it. But you can't learn something from anything if you're not actually focused on what it is that's happening at that current point in time. And I had recently established a couple of friendships in moving to Johannesburg, and it's been a ride, really. It's been quite the ride, because it's like I was always so tunnel visioned on what I wanted to do next that I never actually got to appreciate the now. I never got the opportunity to be grateful for what I already had, which was a loving mom, a loving dad, loving siblings, and people around me that actually want me to win. And it's very hard to distinct. There's a very thin line in the sand when you're distincting between people that want you to win and people that want you to win because of the outcome that they'll get from you winning, you know. And I feel like God eventually, if we have free will, but I'm sort of starting to realize, like, I feel like God, if God starts to realize that you're on a certain path, and the only thing that's going to take you off of this tangent, is some sort of abrupt experience. And that's what he did for me. He he put a halt to something that I thought would be permanent forever. And through that, it forces you to think like that. It forces you to be grateful for the now. Because when the now is the past, that's when you want to be grateful for it. But really and truly, gratefulness comes from being fully present in what is happening right now. And it's pretty scary. Scary to think about. Fear. I've always battled with this one, eh? I wrote down in my journal, what is fear actually? And the answer that I jotted down was, fear is fear is a figment of what we think is going to happen. But because I just talked about, we don't know what the future looks like. The past that isn't relevant anymore, and we live in the present. Fear is something that lives in our head. Really and truly, if you think about it like this, I'll make an extreme analogy is like, if you're about to get robbed, you know, the actual content of that event, the only thing that makes your heart start beating faster, and 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 you start getting in your head about stuff, is the potential of you losing your life. But however, that's all that it is. It is just potential. As serious as that event may be, it is literally just the potential of something that may happen that hasn't even happened yet, because you're still alive, you're still breathing, So, and fear stopped a lot of my goals from turning into reality. It was like back in high school, um, I wanted to pursue rugby seriously, professionally, even at some stage. However, I would put in the work, I would put in the time, I'd put in the hours, and when the time came to, you know, see what's what, like game time now, kickoff, all of that, it's like everything that I had been working towards was just went out the door, because I was scared to perform. I was scared of, what if I don't do this right? What if I don't catch the ball? What if I drop it? What if I miss this tackle and they go score? And living in fear will take you away from being in the present, which is what is required to do the thing that you're striving for, or whatever it is that your goal may be. And fear is literally the one single factor or the one emotion that actually drives worse outcomes than any other emotion. Because if you look at anger, for example, anger is can be a great motivator to change the circumstance of whatever environment you're in. Like if you speak to your friend and they get angry, there's a certain behavior that you had towards them that you're going to stop now because you realize that they're angry. So it's like motivator. Anger is a great motivator for you to change the behaviors of those around you, and therefore you can change your environment. So it's like, okay, people, and you look at really successful people. They usually have some of these stories where they were just so angry for so long, angry at the world, angry at people around them, angry at people that did them wrong, and they use that as fuel, to get to where they actually wanted to go in life. And in hindsight, they realize, okay, it was the anger that actually got me here. But once I'm there, I don't want to be angry anymore. You know. So it's a love-hate relationship with learning how to use your emotions to drive the outcomes that you really want out of life. And it requires you to go through a certain experience for you to even realize that you can do such with your emotions, you know? And it's like within these experiences, what you gain, there needs to be some sort of analysis. Not every not every piece of gold, not everything that shines isn't gold. I think that's how it goes, right? So it's like whatever you were quick to gain, you'll be quick to lose. That's another one of these notes here. And it was exactly the same. I found that to be true with the 100K. I made it, and a week later, I lost everything. Quick to gain, quick to lose. So it's a thing of in terms of mindset, guys. It's like you really really can't get into your head too much about what goes wrong and what goes right. You just literally have to do your best, do the best that you can do right now, and that's okay. Like forget about the stigmas and the expectations that people will set on you. It's like, what do you want for yourself? What do you what do you want out of this? Whatever it is that you're doing, what do you actually want out of this? For me, it's like I wish I had someone relatable to speak to when I was going through these things at the time, you know, because it would be like I would ask all of these questions and I wouldn't, and because, and without finding the answer, because I didn't have answers, it would drive me crazy. However, the platform that I'm trying to build here is you don't always need to have the answer necessarily. Sometimes it's good to live in the unknown of it all. You can live in the fear, find a way to use it to get what you need. You know, you can learn how to be grateful for the pain, learn how to be grateful for the happiness, but in essence, just learn how to be grateful, learn how to establish routine, know that there's steps to follow, you know, on your day-to-day basis. Know that what's done is done, and you can't change the past, but you can only focus on what it is that you're focused on now and what it is that you're trying to achieve now. And one thing that will really, really, really and truly get you there is your spiritual journey. Your spiritual journey will prove to be one of the greatest assets that you can possess. It is like carrying it's like carrying a gun to a knife fight, you know. The saying is actually it goes the opposite way. However, you having that warrior mentality about your spirituality and your faith in the Most High and in God will really get you through any single and every single situation that you may experience. Because really, if you think about it like this, growing up is essentially this process of becoming like everyone else. If you really look at it, if you look at a group of 5, 6, 7 year olds, all of those people act so uniquely towards their peers. Meaning, this you can tell this kid is this kid because he has a certain character that no one can match. Same with the other one. Same with the one next to him. However, when you look at a group of adults, there's a lot more unison. There's a lot more cohesion. There's a lot more. We're all in this oneness and moving in the same direction and doing the same things. But becoming an individual, to be an individual, and you are an individual, you need to keep that character. You need to keep that childlike mentality. People tell you to be more childlike. What that actually means is to be okay with being unique, to be okay with having your own opinions, to be okay with doing things the way that you want to do them instead of the way that it has been deemed acceptable to be done. So it's like this bell curve where it's like God tells us to be more childlike because what we've done is you start off as a kid and then you go through this bell curve where it's like now I'm an adult. Now I'm expected to have X amount of money, X amount of stability in terms of my relationships, X amount of friends, X amount of holidays per year, because that's what my peers are doing, right? However, being an individual means you start as a kid, you go through that bell curve, and you realize this is not where the end is supposed to be at, and you go back to that childlike mentality. And the only way to truly be that is to forget about this idea of being an adult, you know, because essentially it's just a glorified way of saying that you want to be like everybody else who is also an adult because there's certain expectations that adults have that kids don't. When a kid sees something that he wants to do, he'll jump on the table, you know, he'll do that thing. When an adult thinks about something that they want to do, there's so many boundaries that stop them from doing that thing. And so becoming childlike is saying, okay, fuck these boundaries. This is what I want to do. So this is what I'm going to do, you know? And the only way to really get there is to first be a child of God, learning how to pray, learning how to humble yourself to the Lord. There's in the book of Proverbs, there's a list of 7 things that God says that He hates, and one of them is a proud eye. To look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am smart, I am wiser than. That is having a proud eye towards yourself. I'm not saying don't be confident, really and truly. Confidence is a great virtue and asset to have. However, never think that you know more than, because there is always something else. And for you to even develop, it's a process of unlearning your old habits and learning new ones. That is what development is. It's forgetting who you were in the past, learning how to be a person that you're striving to become right now. And my spiritual journey has been really tricky. I think back to I think every kid has this experience where you'll go to church because your parents take you to church because etc. Because your family is just a Christian, Catholic, or whatever it may be family. So you guys go to church instinctively, and you never really have. Oh, well, for me, I never really had that proper relationship with God. It was just a thing of I know this concept, I know of it, I've learned teachings from it. However, I don't have that personal relationship myself. I didn't have it, even though I told myself, okay, no, I have a relationship with God. But that wasn't really the case until recently, really. I was conflicted. I was going through something that was very challenging, and a few weeks ago, my friend calls me, and we haven't spoken in months. He calls me and he's like, "So how's your relationship with God?" And I'm like, "Huh, it's not too good, hey." I'll be honest, it's not too good. That's not even what I'm worried about right now. I'm worried about one, two, and three. And he's like, "I hear that. However, the only thing that's gonna get you through that is bettering your relationship with God." And he's like, before you even write that off, yes, it's cliche. People say it a lot, but actually do it. You know, going back to that mindset thing before I continue here, actually doing it, there's 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 a stigma that people will put on self-help content because people deem it to be cliche. Like we've heard this message so many times, but nobody actually ends up acting on these things. Or there's very few people that act on the knowledge and the experiences that people try to share for you to better your own life. People will call certain side hustle scams, and they haven't actually dug it out. They haven't been through the trenches of that thing to actually see the fruits of that labor, prosper and actually come to life. It's like the the way I can put it is like, okay, people go to the gym, and let's say someone's going to the gym and somebody is trying to make X amount of money, let's say using e-commerce or drop shipping or whatever it may be, right? And people will be like, oh, drop shipping is a scam, one, two, and three. It's like, no, you just haven't realized this outcome in your life. However, there are people who have experienced success. So why don't people call gym a scam? Because there are people that there are people that gym and get X result, get the body that they want to get. There are people there are also people that try gym, fail, and then say gym didn't work for me. So it's the exact same thing with whatever it is that you're trying to do. Like, okay, cool. People will have this idea towards people in like a cultural industry and be like, if you're in the cultural industry, then you can't necessarily get your hopes up. One, two, and three. It's saturated. It's water, water, water. It's the same thing with every single vertical. Gyms are full. There are people that are going to go to gym consistently, do the right thing, eat the right thing, and get the result that they want to get. There are also people that are going to go to gym, not eat the right food, be inconsistent with their programs, and not get the body they want, and then start to point fingers at the world and say, no, gym didn't work for me, or I don't have time for gym, etc. And then it's the same thing for that other vertical. There's someone who's going to have a dream of becoming a rapper. You know, they're gonna write down their songs. They're gonna write down whatever it is that they need to write down. They're gonna produce. They're gonna make music videos, and eventually, whether it be a month, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, they will reap the results that they've wanted since they were a kid. Jay-Z didn't pop until he was like what, like 28 or 30 or something. And so it's like, what makes you think that you're better than Jay-Z so that you can lose this dream, you can forget this dream, or throw it in the trash when you're like 23, 24, because people are telling you to be an adult. But if you had a relationship with God, you'd know that He actually tells you to be childlike, be an individual, have your own character. Don't conform to what everyone is telling you to do because you've reached a certain age. So you're expected to act a certain way. It's all bullshit, really, you know. And it's like you can't necessarily have a love or hate relationship with the experiences that you go through. You should really consider it all joy in the end. That's what God actually tells us to do. Consider all your experiences joy. Consider all the things that you go through joy, because one, they teach you strength, they teach you perseverance. And you will need that perseverance when you're, you know, going through something later on down the line that requires you to have a dragon-like character. It's like when in the beginning you're a kid with a knife, or you're a kid with a sword, and you're a kid with a sword and you're fighting a bear. That's all you are. And after you kill this bear, it's like a game. Life is really like a game. After you kill this bear, you move on to the next challenge. So now you're probably going to face a different beast. However, you're more equipped now. Now you have a gun. Now you have a shield. Now you're ready. Now you're actually ready for the challenge that's at hand. So it's like consider all your experiences joy, good or bad, because you know that the next character that you're going to face, the next dragon that you're going to face, is going to require you to have a bigger arsenal that you're going to gain from the experience that you've just had, or something that you've just went through and persevered through. You know, because it's like someone may ask, okay, what does trusting God with all of these experiences actually feel like when you don't see the plan, you don't see what the plan is next, you don't see what the next step is. So what does actually trusting God through this actually look like, you know? And really that's what faith is. Oh, Chloe, can you close the door quickly, G? And that's what faith actually is. It's not knowing. It's thinking and believing that God has a plan for you. The next step in your life you can take blindly because you know God is not leading you astray. Because He tells you in His book that He has plans to prosper you, not harm you. You hear it a lot, but people actually need to start believing it, you know? Because people want to have contingency plans when it comes to having faith. You want to say, okay, God has my back. However, um, what's my plan B? I told God this is my dream. I want to be this. I want to be a Springbok rugby player. I want to be the biggest rapper in South Africa. I want to be one, two, and three, you know. But I have a plan B. I'm thinking to myself, okay, if this doesn't work out, then this is what I'm gonna do with my life. That's not faith. That's not faith. And if you really believe that God has plans to prosper you, then you will go at that thing with all you have. It's like when you're drowning. If you've ever been in a pool of water drowning, there's only one thing that you want to do, and that's breathe. And you'll use up all the strength that you have in your body. You'll accumulate all the strength that you have just to get that breath of air. It's like you need to apply that same mentality to what it is that you're trying to get. What is you trying to strive for? You want to be the biggest, then you need to understand that you're going to have an exceptional path. And exception, by definition, means you're different from the rest. You won't have the same experiences as everyone else because you're one of one. You want to be the exception in your field, right? You want to be the one who's different. And the only way to be different is to do different actions, is to take different decisions, right? And you take those decisions in confidence because you know that God has your back and what you're going for. Whether or not your song blows up, whether or not you make the A team, you know, whether or not you make whether or not you meet your KPIs in your business this week, you know, like God has a plan. He has a plan for you, and he knows the next step, so you don't need to know the next step, you know. So that's exactly what it looks like to trust God. It's like you don't have to see the plan because He does. God sees the plan, and that's enough. You should know that that's enough for you. And even though it doesn't feel like enough, it feels scary. It feels dark. It feels blinding. It's like I don't know what the next thing is, and that's okay. It's realizing that is okay to not know what the next thing is, but just knowing that whatever is coming next, I am running towards it full steam ahead because I know behind me I have the Most High. I have God. I have the angels. I have these angels protecting me, guiding me, through all of these tricks and corners that you'll navigate through life. And it's it's scary, guys. It really is scary, but it's like you don't have a choice really. If you decide to give your life to God one day, you realize that you didn't actually want to have a choice in the first place, you know, because there's so much that we don't know And the only way to know what to do next is to have some sort of expert tell you this is the next step, because that's what a mentor is, right? And who would be a better mentor than the person who created the thing that we're living in? You know, he's written this. It's in the scriptures. When you read scripture and you're like, huh, that seems a lot similar to what I'm going through right now, you realize, nah, come on, come on. You realize, you start nodding to yourself and like, oh, I've actually been through that before. There's a reason why that is. You're not the first person to experience this. You're not the first person to experience heartbreak. You're not the first person to experience being fat. You're not the first person to experience, not having your song go triple platinum, or being dropped by your record label. You're not the first person to experience all of these things. And there are stories in the Bible that will tell you how followers of God navigated these journeys for them to then prosper in the end. And it's literally the playbook. It's the only playbook to life that you'll ever actually truly and really need, to be honest. And another thing that it does for you, aside from you achieving your goals, your identity in yourself. It's like there's a gap in everybody's mind between who you think you are, or who you know yourself to be, versus what everybody thinks you are. And you'll never actually be comfortable internally until those two ideas are one, until those two ideas align. So everyone thinks you're this person and you actually are this person. However, if you're split in two, right? So like for example, you go to church, you want to build your relationship with God, you're doing all of these things to better your life, and but all of your friends are on a train that's heading that way, and yours is heading this way. You're going to be split between two different realities, and it's going to drive you crazy in the end, because it's going to be like, I think the theory is the Red Queen's race. You're running full sprint ahead, but you're remaining in the same position. You're stagnated because you're split between two different realities, two different personalities, characters, traits, friendships, groups, all of that, simply because of the fact that you haven't aligned yourself. And the only way to gain true alignment to your core, where it's like, I know that I'm aligned now, is by building that relationship with God, because God will tell you why He put you on this earth. He will tell you whether He won't. It might not be through a voice. It might be through something that you see, an analogy that you build in your head after seeing something. Like, you ever had that moment as a kid where it's like, God, if you hear my prayer right now, have like a bird fly past the window, something stupid, a little anomaly like that, or something like that, you know. And those little things will give you those signals. It's like, oh, okay, God's actually telling me to go left. God is telling me to go straight now. Then God is telling me that when I get down to that robot, I need to take a right. And all of that is actually going to lead you to alignment. It's going to lead you to having an identity that is one with who you think you are up here, who God wants you to be as a person, why He put you on this earth, and who your friends are and who everyone around you is. And it's not necessarily, people think it's a thing of like, okay, I'm on this self-help journey now and I'm gonna get better at one, two, and three, so I'm gonna cut everyone off, you know, and I'm gonna be by myself and I'm just gonna go back into the back cave one, two, and three. That's not life. That's not what life is. The first thing God did on this, or one of the first things that God did, was put was give Adam a companion, because we are social creatures by nature. So this anomaly of you being alone for an extended period of time is fictional. It's not. It can't be real. Or I speculate that it's fictional. people may have different opinions because we were put on this earth to socialize and help each other become better. It's just that same concept of, having ubuntu when you're driving and you see a man on the side of the road and you decide to look into your little cup holder and see what change is there and you give it to him. He's gonna then take that money, he's gonna go buy food and give that money to somebody else who's gonna then take that same money, buy food for his family and feed his family. So you realize that everything just actually just works in a circle. There is no end destination with people because you live simultaneously. That same concept of Saunders, like you could be so in your head about what it is that's happening in your life and think that the world is just ending and everything is just going to shit. And there could be a person right across the street from wherever it is you're standing in public going through the exact same thing with with the exact same situation. They're experiencing loss, heartbreak, failure of, a certain outcome that they didn't get that wasn't desirable for them. And it puts you to realize that puts you in a position where you have no choice but to be humble because there's actually it gets worse. That's the thing that I like to tell myself. Like, it can really get worse. You think it's bad, it can really get worse because you're crying in a bed with a full stomach. You're crying about your test result. You're crying about not getting selected for this team. You're crying that your girlfriend left you. You're crying that your boyfriend left you. It gets worse. It gets way worse. Some people don't have a bed. Some people don't have somebody to call. Some people don't even have a phone to call people on. Your situation is somebody's dream life. That will always be there will always be a person who will take your situation over whatever it is that they're going through. So in that, like I said in the beginning, you need to consider all of these experiences joy because you really are privileged. You really are privileged. If you're watching this right now, you probably chances are you are privileged, because you have a device, you have connection to the internet. There are people on this earth. I think I'm not going to get into stats, but there are people on this earth who have never ever even been on the internet. Have never like clicked on YouTube and said, okay, I'm going to relax, take a seat and watch something nice. So really, in realizing your privilege, you will consider it all joy. One, because it helps you persevere for your next battle, for your next test. It helps you build strength and character. However, it also brings you humility because you realize that it gets worse. For somebody else out there, it is worse. So it brings a sort of lightness to your shoulders because you're like, you know, this is not the worst that it can get. It can really get bad. It can get really bad. And the next step that you take once you realize those two things is so once you've considered all joy, you've considered all your experiences joy, and said, okay, whatever it is I'm going through now, I know that it's actually going to help me later on down the line. And secondly, I'm going to be humble about this experience. I'm not going to be, self-criticizing and be in my head and be all remorseful because I know that it gets worse. Is three is you learn to be light on yourself. You know, in a previous episode, I spoke about instead of criticizing yourself when something doesn't go your way, ask yourself why it didn't go this way, because everything is an accumulation of inputs to for a tree to grow. It's soil plus certain seeds and water or whatever it may be, and everything on earth is an accumulation of inputs for you to be here, your mom plus your dad and a little bit of fun time, and look, now you pop out. So everything is just an accumulation of inputs. So the only way to actually get the outcome that you want next time is to ask yourself, what were the inputs that got me to this outcome? What can I change next time so that I don't get this outcome, but I get the one that I actually wanted the first time, you know? And obviously there are certain things that are out of your control, but in terms of everything that is in your control, you need to be mighty possessive over that because it must never occur to you when you're 80, 90 years old that hmm, that thing I was trying when I was 21. What if I actually like just tried a little bit harder? What if I really, really tried a little bit harder? Would I have gotten that? Because yeah, that to me that is one of my biggest fears. To be honest, it's like to think back and be like, what if I actually gave that just a little bit more gas? You know. So although your outcomes may be a combination of what you don't control and what you do control, what you control, you need to make sure that you've covered all grounds, and I'm talking all grounds. It's like, hmm, I called 100 people today to sell my song to, so they can put it on the shelves or put it in the record stores or whatever it may be. I called 100 people. I called 100 stores to sell my CDs. Call 101. Call 102. 103. It's just getting really mighty possessive about that thing. Whatever it is, whatever that may be for you. Because I remember with the whole reason when I look back, the whole reason why my rugby journey didn't go the way I wanted to, and I had all the uncontrollables in my favor. It was the controllables that I let determine my poor result. All the uncontrollables were in my favor. I went to a good school. I come from a good home. I came from a home where I could afford to have my own special diet so that I could look a certain way and so I could perform a certain way. I had access to amenities that many of the people that got the result I wanted didn't have access to. However, my problem was here. I wasn't aligned with my identity. I wasn't aligned spiritually. Therefore, I was never ever going to get to that place. And whereas if you look at the people that did get there, the one thing that they always had in common, I always remember like, this guy made it over me. This guy made this team over me. Why? And I just analyze these people like, man, these guys have proper faith. Like if you look at a lot of top performing athletes, a lot of them always relate their results or relate their successes to the mere fact that they were just led by God. And it sounds so simple, but it's like when I was looking back then, I would be like, what does that even mean, G? Like, what does that even look like? And it should have been a process of not criticizing myself for my lack of relationship with God, but asking myself, what are the inputs that are in my control that have led to me having this outcome where my relationship with Him is poor? Therefore, I'm not aligned with my identity. Therefore, when I perform on the field, I'm not confident, and therefore I can't actually perform to the best of my capabilities. Or if you're a cultural person and I can't make the best art, I can't make the best clothing piece, I can't make the best song that I know I can make. It's like if you've ever produced a piece of work and you look at it and you're like, this can really be better. Why is it not better though? And you just don't have the answer. You keep playing it back in your mind. One thing that you really find that can actually change that or like help you in those situations is to just get a piece of paper out and be like, what are the inputs that have led me to this outcome where I feel so bland about the piece of work that I have produced. And once you get really logical and analytical about your your work or your produce and your product, it's just a process of iterating and saying, cool, let's swap this out with this. Let's try this beat. Let me try this color on this art piece. Let me actually try hold the ball this way when I pass so that I can get that extra 2-3 meters so that my pass is more accurate which means I'm going to get selected next time because I have the coaches are going to consider my past better than my opponent, which means my song is going to blow up because more people are going to relate with it, which means this art piece is going to be admired even more because it has these certain components that relate to all of these people's lives in cohesion instead of just this one person, you know. So just getting really, really into dissecting outcomes actually is what gets you to the outcome that you're looking for, you know. But what's even more important than that is who you are. It's like that can't change. It's like God. There's a Arabic there's an Arabic like lesson. It's like don't spend in evil what you prayed for in goodness. And what that basically means is once you get that outcome, you can't turn around and be like, "Oh, look at me," you know. No, it's supposed to be okay. Oh, look at God, because people hear it a lot. They say pride is the devil because it takes your eyes off of what's gotten you there, which means now that you're fixated and focused on something else, you fixated on you self-aggrandize yourself and you're like, look at me, like I did this, I'm only this age. Like, wow, I'm that guy for real, you know? And that process of just being prideful, God's gonna be like, okay, I'm taking this from this boy. Doesn't know what he's doing, you know? He needs to change. And the only way the only way I'm gonna make him change is by taking away this thing that I'd given him in goodness because he had prayed for it in goodness, and now he's spending it in evil. Same with money, you know. You pray to make a certain amount of money, and then next day you go and blow it at the club with your friends. It takes you one day to finish what you've been praying for months on end. Because that's all it takes. You know, evil is way faster than goodness, than blessings. Evil comes very easily. And it's like we can't be on the fence of now I'm praying, God, please can you do a one, two, and three for me in my life? And then one, two, and three comes and now I'm on the other side and I'm spending it in evil, you know? And which is why it's also extremely important to have the right people around you, people that support what you're doing, people that are going to tell you the truth when you most need to hear it. There's a book called The Way of the Superior Man, and this David guy, he talks about surround yourself with masculine figures who will give you energy through thought out concepts and ideas, because the 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 Shiva, which is basically the persona of a masculine man, by nature experiences their own lives and then shares experiences with other Shivas so that they can go out and do better and iterate, back to that iteration thing. And so for me, for example, I had a friend yesterday who I was speaking about this thing, and it's like, okay, I want to do one, two, and three, like, but I don't know, you know. And he just straight up told me, he's like, yo, sir, don't do that. It's like, yo, just don't do that. She, she, she. That's not gonna work, you know. Like, get out of your head, Jeff. First of all, and it's like, if you're surrounded by the wrong type of people, they will tell you whatever it is that you want to hear, and that's actually going to destroy you in the end. Because what does it do? It's going to boost your pride, and pride is what? Pride is the devil. However, if you're surrounded by proper masculine energy, they're going to tell you what you need to hear so that you can become who they know you can be and who they know that you want yourself to be as well. You know, it's like I would much rather have a friend who will call me and say, okay, have you done one, two, and three like you said you wanted to do one, two, and three? Versus a friend who calls me and says, yo, let's go to X location and, you know, pop some bottles, let's party, let's have a good time. Because that other guy, actually cares about your well-being or actually cares about my well-being, because he knows that this is something that I'm passionate about, and he knows that, there's a certain outcome that I'm trying to get from this. And so because he respects that, he respects me enough to say, fuck your pride. I don't give a fuck about your pride, because you're my friend. I care about you, and I want you to do well in this. So surrounding yourself with the right people, actually, it's like a full circle moment. It closes the loop. You find God, you find identity, right? Your purpose comes back to you. You're motivated, you're driven, and the only thing that puts all of that into a locker is where it's like, you have good people around you who are going to make sure that you stay in this circle of just doing good things for yourself, doing good shit for yourself and who you say that you want to be. Because the wrong friend will do the exact opposite for you. They will build up your fake self-esteem that you've built through prideful efforts. They will build up your fake self-esteem that you've accumulated through prideful efforts, and God will then take away whatever it is that he had given you in blessing, because you're now sitting in this character type. You now have this identity, therefore you don't deserve the blessings that he had given you, and he's going to take those away from you. Because that friend is going to be like, okay, let's go to this location. Now we'll go to the gym tomorrow. Now we'll study another day. Now we'll do it tomorrow. If you a good way to actually tell if someone is good for you or not is like, how urgent are they? What's the urgency like? Are they the type of person that says, okay, let's do this now? How quickly can we do this? Because they understand the value of the present, or is it a thing of I think sometime next week, and then when next week comes, I think sometime that other week, then you know what type of person that you're really dealing with. That will tell you a lot, actually. That's what I realized, you know. But other than that, those lessons in my journal, or these lessons in my journal, have gotten me to where I'm at right now. I used to think that this was corny. It's me speaking to a camera. And sometimes I'm still in my head about it. There are a lot of people that disagree with it, there are a lot of people that agree with it. But I don't do it for the virality or the popularity or how cool it is or how uncool someone may think it is. I do it for that little voice note that I'll receive in the afternoon saying, this really changed my perspective on this. Thank you so much. Keep making this content. Yo, I remember how we used to spend time together, 1, 2, and 3, when we were still at this school. And this is helping me persevere through this certain situation that I'm going through now. So thank you. Please continue to do this. When are you doing another one? Because that's what impact is. That's what fulfillment is. It's like we've all become so materialistically driven and saying, I want X amount of cars, I want X amount of houses, I want X amount of money. Fulfilled, but none of those things are actually fulfilling in within themselves. Because once you have those things, then it becomes about who are you experiencing these assets with. Because all good and true, it is extremely lonely to have all of these assets and have nobody that you know who actually loves you properly to experience them with. So fulfillment, God will teach you in the Bible that fulfillment comes before success. He tells you, lay your eyes on me and I will make whatever you touch prosper. However, the laying your eyes on me part is what gives you fulfillment, so that you're not going to be materialistically driven. You're driven by purpose, a higher purpose. That's what higher purpose actually means. You're fulfilled inside before you're fulfilled outside. fulfilled internally before externally. Because imagine the how depressing it can be for you to continue to think to yourself, if I don't get an A plus on this test, if I don't get an A plus on this exam, yeah. So it's like if you don't get an A plus on this test, that doesn't actually say anything about who you are as a person or speak to your character. It only speaks to the amount of preparation that you put into something. So in terms of outcomes, it's always going to boil down to your inputs, and that's all that you can control is just your inputs. You can't control the weather of the day of the test or whatever, but all you can control are your inputs. Therefore, you should be absolutely crazy about making sure that those have been, you know, those have been prepared for in the best way that you can, so that you know that it's never going to be a thing of, I could have tried harder. However, in whatever result that you do get in the end, know that it's not attached to who you are as a person. But what is attached to who you are as a person, like I said, is the way you treat others. That's what fulfillment is. And again, it's what God tells us to do. So whatever you sickos decide to do with your lives, just know that being good to other people is always going to be step one. Is always going to make you feel better inside. Therefore, whatever it is that you touch next it has a higher probability of going the way that you want it to go because you're just moving lighter, not carrying all of this heavy baggage. And it really just starts by being selfless. Learn how to be selfless. Something that I'm learning lately is the virtue of being selfless and not crucifying your selfish version, your past selfish version of yourself before. Don't crucify that person because you wouldn't be selfless. You wouldn't be this new person if it wasn't for the experiences and the consequences that you learned from what that old personality taught you, right? Can't really regret it. It's like overnight success. It doesn't come from you know luck. It's a thing of what are you doing daily, the action that you're taking daily. It's never going to be a thing of you do it today and the result comes tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. And whatever it is you're trying to pursue, it's a set of daily results, and God one night is going to decide tomorrow. Tomorrow you're going to get this result. That's what overnight success actually is. It's not a thing of you get lucky today and tomorrow you get the result. It's a thing of what you're working on during the day, and in the nighttime, on one of the nights that God will select, He'll say, "This is your night. Tomorrow you're successful." But it's a thing of a stack of daily, little iterations, little improvements, just becoming that little percentage of better, and not crucifying yourself for when you weren't better, for when you were wrong, when you were fat, when you used to have bad habits, when you used to be unserious about your career in music and culture and in sport and finance, whatever it may be, and just knowing that I just need to take it one day at a time and forget the mistakes of yesterday, but learn from the lessons of the experience of having that mistake. You know, forget the mistake itself. Don't be hard on yourself, but learn from that guy so that you can be a better guy in the future. You'll be a guy's guy, a real geyser. But yeah, that's about it for my thoughts on my diary. This has been episode 1 of my little diary thoughts and some of the things that have helped me to become what I am today. I'm not saying I'm a complete version of myself. However, like I always like to say, I'm much further than where I was when I started. You know, it's not easy, but the steps are simple. Mm.